This is one of the spots I've wanted to fly for a long time. This is Morrow Bay, California. It's basically between LA and San Francisco, and off to the left there you can see the iconic Morro Bay rock. Takeoff here was obviously easy because you're at sea level and the wind is just laminar coming in really nice. It was really great to fly this, although this day was kind of cloudy and overcast, and condensation started to build up on the camera, and you'll see that a little bit later. The day before this actually had been a really sunny day, but I was too excited to fly and I forgot to hook up my cameras. Here I was just kind of checking my lines because I had some things that were a little bit crossed, and I didn't know if that was permanent or if it was just looking like it was hanging up on something. So I just made sure that those were squared away. And then I came back around to my launch spot because there was a crowd of people that wanted me to do a flyby, and that's eventually what I did. So this kind of gives you an overview of my launch spot, where I took off from and the direction that I ran to come into the wind. But before I did a flyby, I just was checking my lines and seeing how things were going. Really awesome flight. Really love this. On this flight, I had somewhat experimented. I put one of my cameras kind of on my chest, but it was actually too low, and I didn't know at the time, but it was just kind of overlooking my cockpit, basically, where I put my phone on some Velcro in front of me, and you'll see some of that footage a little bit later. But I was hoping to capture more of a front view, and I'll have to adjust that a little bit later. But I wish I would have had a lot more cameras on this flight, because there was some really beautiful scenery, and we got to see some sharks, which kind of blew me away, and I was really glad that I didn't have an engine out, and you'll see that a little bit further down the video. But flying at Morrow Bay is it's really fun. The beach is wide open. There are some areas that you have to be aware of that people don't want you flying over. As far as a little bit closer to land, there's an area that's more of a sanctuary for birds, and you want to stay away from those areas. I had a really good time flying a little bit low here and kind of just above the waves, and just enjoying myself. And I have to say, other than the cold overcast day, it was another day in paradise, because I mean, flying at the beach, you can't beat it. So here's that view I was telling you about. This is my phone that you see right in front of me, but this kind of gives you an idea of what I was trying to do, but it just wasn't high enough. There was a couple video clips that I could use, and I used them as I was flying and editing this, but by and large it was kind of a waste. After I got back and looked at the video, there was not much usable video. So just another learning point. You got to really check your stuff before you go. Don't get too excited before you leave and take off without preparing, because you'll regret it later. As you can see here, here's my phone. I have Velcro on the back of that casing that I modified, and then I put a cord to it, so it's short enough to where it won't go on my prop if it does fall during launch or any other time. And so basically I just keep it safe that way. as I was flying down the beach, I noticed these guys that were just laying out their wings, and it's really interesting to come upon other flyers, and they kind of waved at me and I waved at them, and I thought I'd come back around and just see what they were doing, if they were getting ready to take off. And eventually they waved me down. Honestly, I had second thoughts about landing, because once I take off I just want to fly all day, and this was my last day that I was able to fly, so I wanted to get as much time as I could. But I did a flyby to ask if they were going to be flying, and I don't know if he heard me, and I don't know what he said, but I know he wanted me to come down. So I did my first flyby here just to see, and then you can see the condensation building up, which is kind of funny because I didn't have any on my sunglasses, and when I landed, it eventually dried up. But you'll meet these guys in just a second. Here's my swing around to my landing, which I was pretty proud of, honestly. As I landed and was trying to bring my wing down, the line got caught on the camera above me and eventually got stuck. But this was Patrick, actually. Met him for the first time. Really nice guy. He's also known as Wing Envy online. I think he has a YouTube channel and an Instagram. But he teaches paragliding and powered paragliding. So we got to talk for a little bit, and just showing you some footage of kind of what it looked like from the other camera as I was coming in for a landing. I just came in really quick and then killed the engine, and it dipped down, and I came into a skidding halt. But back to Patrick. So I was talking to him, and he gave me some pointers as far as where to fly, where not to fly at Morrow Bay. You definitely don't want to fly over the rock for some other reasons. This was his friend Cormac, and both of them joined me in the air a little bit later. I went down and flew a little bit longer before they launched, but it was great to meet fellow flyers, and it's great to get in touch with other people that love this sport and really enjoy it, because it's so fun to fly with other people. And you'll see some footage of them flying here in a little bit. But I was just really grateful to meet them, and I was really glad that I landed, because it was great to talk to them. And I was able to take off on my first launch here, and was really glad that I was, because I hate when I mess up a launch. But again, flying at the beach and with some laminar wind, it's just really ideal, and I love it. So I have to say, flying down the beach was really fun, because I don't think I've waved at more people or had people wave at me as much as on this flight. It seemed like everybody I flew by was waving at me, and it was just a really welcoming community. This is flying north towards Cayucos, I think is how you pronounce it, and this is down by the pier. This is actually where I started to see some sharks on my way back. And it took me by surprise, because I hadn't seen any the whole time. But as I was coming back, I noticed some shapes in the water, and noticed that it wasn't kelp or seaweed. And so you'll see some footage of that. But really, this beach was just full of really happy people waving at me, and I just had a grand time flying this beach. So you can see it got sunny there really quick. Well, this is actual footage from the day previous when I didn't have all my cameras set up, and so I had to do some recording on my phone. And as I was looking down over this area, I noticed some shadows, and some of it was kelp, but then one caught my eye in particular, and you'll see that coming up here in just a bit. And so I circled back around. I was really surprised to see how many sharks were just off the shore, and it was surprising to me that there were so many in one place, and they kind of congregated there, but there really weren't any that I saw down in Morrow Bay. So I think one of these was a great white because of its size, but I couldn't tell you for sure. Right here you'll see as I swing around, that big one right there is probably a great white. The others I don't know what they are, but there were definitely plenty of them swimming around, and I was just flying high enough to where I knew if I had an engine out I could probably make it back to shore, but this one in particular that I fly over right here, it was a pretty big fat fella, so I'm guessing that might have been a great white, but I'm not sure. But it was just really interesting to see these sharks in their environment and see them just right offshore. This is flying back south now, back towards where I saw and met Patrick and Cormac, and I catch up with them, and I can tell that they're getting set up for launch. And so I did some flyovers just to try to capture them as they were taking off. And wouldn't you know, the one time that I was flying back the other way to come back around, Patrick took off, so I didn't really get his launch, but I did get Cormac's launch somewhat, which is kind of cool because they took off from a bluff, and you'll see that. And at one point, honestly, I was really worried because I looked back and I saw Patrick, and I saw something coming out of the back of his seat, and I thought, oh no, his reserve chute has come out unexpectedly, because I've had a friend do that and they ended up breaking their back because they were over land about 100 feet up. And so I turned around, and once I was able to get set enough to get my camera out, I realized he had just unfurled the American flag, and it was so awesome to see that. I was relieved to see that, and you'll see that footage coming up here shortly, but it was just a blast flying with those guys. So shout out to Patrick and Cormac and Wing Envy and their business, because they're great guys, and I'm sure they're great guys to learn from. Something that I think is really interesting that a lot of people don't know about that don't fly are that wings have a rotor that comes off the tip of the wing, and it's kind of like a wake. When somebody's water skiing and they leave behind a wake, well, there's a wake that forms behind the wings, and so if you're flying behind somebody, you have to be aware of that. You have to know that you could eventually go through their wake, and when you go through their wake, then you're going to drop a couple feet and your wing is going to rock back and forth. And that's exactly what happened to me. Patrick and Cormac were flying in front of me, and you can see how far ahead they are of me, but still I went through their wake, and you can see here the effects of that. Now, of course, it's not too bad when you're looking at here on the video, but when you're sitting in the seat and you drop pretty quickly, it can be unsettling. So but you get used to it after a while, and it's part of the fun. Well, this pretty much wraps up the last moments of my flight at Morrow Bay and over Cayucos. Huge shout out to Patrick and Cormac. Appreciate them giving me some pointers on where not to fly and just coming flying with me. It was really a great time, and I loved my time at Morrow Bay. Also, huge shout out to my wife. She puts up with a lot, and she allows me to go flying while she's kind of laying on the beach, and so really love her and love her support, because this sport brings me a lot of joy, and I'm just appreciative of that. So if you ever get a chance to fly over Morrow Bay, I thoroughly recommend it. It's a beautiful area. You get to see some wildlife, and you get to see a lot of happy people on the beach that will definitely wave at you. Enjoyed it, and of course flying at any beach probably is just beautiful, and I can't wait for my next trip to the beach.